Hello and welcome to today's webcast, Time Management for Better Cost Oversight. We are joined here today by Shannon and Thoke, who will talk up to us about the importance of good time management to capture how much capacity each project and program consume is very critical, especially to CFO, to use it to set budgets, capitalize work, and even apply for tax credits. Shannon has been with CA for quite a while. She's a veteran in the area of product management, both waterfall and agile. She's also an expert on resource planning, portfolio management, and the implementation of PPM. She has an MBA from Santa Clara University, and that is why she gets customer needs on a deeper business level. It's great to have you here, Shannon. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to be going through a little bit of time management, and not just physically how it's done, which we'll show you, but why it's important. And I think even more than, the nuts and bolts of entering time, it's really what you get from it. A lot of organizations, they often think of time management as weather. And what happens is that, the individual employees say, I don't want to book my time because, you're just going to see how much time I'm working, and then if I don't work enough time, you're going to lay me off in the next risk or things like that. But that's not really what time management is for. Obviously, there are aspects to that, but the majority of people, they use accurate time reporting for capitalization and RD tax credits. And we're going to really talk about those and why that information is important. So exactly why it's important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these 5 bullets. I personally have been very involved in these. Prior to coming to CA, I actually worked at PayPal, and I was in charge of both capitalization and R&D tax credits from a tool perspective. And of course, we used CA PPM at the time. It was known as Clarity. So one of the things that happens in a capitalization world is that organizations rely on capitalization to basically run their business from a financial perspective. So how much CapEx and OpEx they're putting to their projects is really important. Now, some organizations, what they do is they just do an estimate. So they would say, okay, we estimate that 60% of our time is capitalizable and 40% is expense. However, whatever estimation that organizations typically do, what they find is when they start entering time, they actually end up capitalizing more, which really helps them from a financial perspective. So one of the most important things of time is not just creating an estimate for capitalization, but creating actuals, because actuals we found almost always exceed the estimate that an organization might put in place for capitalization. The second thing that's really important is an R&D tax credit. So most people who probably don't work in finance or haven't worked with their finance people don't really know about this. But basically what this is that there is a tax regulation that says any work that is new innovation, that is basically kind of in the same area of capitalization, so not just the new work, but the innovation work, not the QA, that particular work you can get a credit for. So this is like an actual money back. It's not just taken off your taxes, it's a credit. And that is a huge benefit for organizations. But again, the only way to do that is one of 2 ways. One of the ways is to do an estimate. And again, sometimes the regulators or the auditors won't take that estimate because they'll say that's not accurate enough or it's not detailed enough that if you were audited that there would be data to rely on. So they often use the CA PPM data. So some organizations, what they do is they put a little checkbox or a little Boolean flag on the project that says, is this new innovation? Obviously new innovation wouldn't be things like phase 2 of a project unless it was substantially different. But it would be things like, let's say you introduced a new software product to the market. That would be a new innovation. So I think that one, while capitalization everyone's heard of, the R&D tax credit, if you're not a finance person, you haven't heard of that. But that is super important. Now the next thing is billing. So we don't do the billing specifically directly in the CPPM system, but oftentimes what happens is that we take the hours that have been worked in terms of time, and then we send that to a finance system, and then they do the billing. And sometimes they bill, if it's a professional service organization, they bill their customer. So they say, hey, customer, you owe us this amount of money. Or maybe it's internal billing, where you do chargebacks, where you say, I've done work for your organization, I want to get that money back, even if it's in terms of, kind of funny money, and they would then be able to use that money for their own projects. So it's basically internal billing. So that's really important, because if you're not internally billing, or you're not externally billing, even more important, you won't have the capital to do your new projects within a particular organization. The next one is investment tracking. Now, one of the things that organizations do is they want to know how well they're doing. How well did we do this project? Are we estimating accurately? If you don't do actual tracking, you'll never know how well you estimate. You could think you're our top organization for estimation. You could think you are 90% accurate. But if you were to do actuals, you would realize that, in fact, you're completely inaccurate in your estimation process. And the amount that a project is really costing you, because even if you're not tracking time and you're not billing back, it has a cost in terms of the people and the dollars that are going towards that project. And if you're an organization such as a company that does software, any kind of development, or things where people work on projects, that cost of the employee is probably one of the most important costs that you have. And if you're not accurately tracking those investments, then you're not going to get that information back in terms of plan versus actual analysis. The last one that people often think of, but they don't really kind of nail, is vendor contract management. Let's say that you're an organization that uses outside or external consultants, whether they be in the U.S. or international. Now, one of the things that those vendors often do is they provide you a monthly bill. Jim works 50 hours, he's $100 an hour, therefore his bill is $5,000. Now, one of the things that a lot of our organizations that are very detail-oriented and want to make sure that the information is accurate, because sometimes those bills can be inflated, is that if their hours in PPM do not match the hours on the bill, they don't get paid for it. And so simply, this not only tracks the bill that's coming in, but it tracks the amount of effort that they're working on the projects in order to create the bill. Because a lot of times the bill doesn't necessarily tie to the projects. It just says 50 hours for Jim, he worked for your organization. And so vendor contract management is really how you kind of put the nuts and bolts to accurately capturing not only what the bill was for the vendor, but also how much time they charge to your project. So those are the kind of 5 areas where time management is important. And of course, I think Alf noted that you can ask questions in the Q&A box on the right side of your WebEx. So one of the other questions that we often get is, well, my Agile tool, it tracks time. I can just use that. That seems to be fine. Well, there's a lot of things that are very different in Agile tools and how they track time. And some of them don't, but a few of them do. And then also how PPM tracks time. One of the things that it doesn't meet is often the test of finance. And that's basically the finance controls. Because even if you enter time, oftentimes you need to go back, you need to adjust that timesheet, you need to return it, it needs to go through a workflow process in order to be accurate from not only a time management perspective, but also from a financial governance perspective. And those Agile tools often do not meet that test of finance, and in fact, we haven't really seen one that does. And one of the new benefits that we're going to be adding into a future release is the addition of putting our timesheet directly embedded in our CA Agile Central, formerly known as Rally product, so that you get the best of both worlds. You get an Agile product, plus you get the ability to enter time in a tool that's going to provide that test of finance and that those governance and financial controls that are necessary. So what does PPM provide to you? We're going to be showing you a couple of slides, and then I will also be diving into the product itself. But basically, we provide powerful time management. And really, this is talking about the time entry flow approval process, entering the time, approving the time, allowing you to capitalize that information. And of course, we have our mobile time manager as well. So it's going to really simplify this time entry. And for those who haven't seen it, our time entry is now in our new user experience. We use ethnographic research to really determine how we should go forward in entering time and creating a timesheet. That started in 15.1, and we will continue creating more information in this. But we'll be able to show you our 15.1 version, which was out last year, and we'll be showing you your time entry from there. But really, we're going to provide kind of the best interface for time management. So this is a timesheet. I will, in fact, go into it as well. But basically, you can see here the entire user experience has been changed. We have a carousel to go back and forth to weeks. We can enter the time directly in here. We will have a notes section to allow us to enter notes associated with this. And we'll be showing you this new user experience. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the slide. It's more interesting when I kind of pull it up. The other thing that's really a lot better in this new user experience is the timesheet review and approval process. So previously, if you had used our classic UI for our timesheet, if you had, say, 5 employees, you would have to go into the employee, click on the timesheet, click approve, go back to the next one, go into the next one. Now everything is in one window. I click on the person, it opens the timesheet, I can approve all, I can return all, I can remind all, I can use the little thumbs up and thumbs down button, very much like Facebook, to approve them individually. And it's really a Kanban style for bulk timesheet actions. And so it's really going to give you the flexibility to review and approve them all from one window without leaving the same kind of window to have to go back and forth. It's a huge time saver, and it has that graphical user experience where you can see exactly who they are on the left-hand side. They're very small, I'll show you them, but they're pictures. So it's going to give you just a quick refresher who this person is, what they've been working on, and then you can take action on whether you review and approve that particular timesheet. Now, we do have organizations that actually do auto-approvals. From a finance perspective, I wouldn't suggest this, but from a tool perspective, it is a possibility. So it could be that you submit all the timesheets, but you don't go through each individual one. Again, not suggested from a finance perspective, but possible. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about here, and I'll show you kind of what's going on here, is this is the work breakdown structure. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the work breakdown structure, but you can see here that in some of these particular tasks, you see how the cost type right there is capital or operating. Well, that's basically saying that from the template, typically, the cost type came in. So, for example, in the planning phase, our first task is this define, scope, and change control process, and that is capital. And those other ones are operating. So this is exactly how it would come into your timesheet. Now, we can display the columns, we can hide the columns, but basically what happens is that as they report their time against a particular task, it would be charged with capital or operating. Now, of course, if it's in the planning phase and there's no cost type assigned, it would look at the top level. So, in fact, the top level of planning is operating. So those 3 tasks, the new task 2, planning phase gate complete, although you cannot book time to a milestone, those would be tagged as operating. So it would inherit that from the top. The other things that come in are things like charge code. So you can tag not only a cost type, but the type of area that this particular cost would be affiliated to. Is it a management? Is it a planning? Is it a design type of charge code? And those are often used in cost plans, and we'll be showing you a cost plan next. And so that's how this information is tagged with capital and operating. And as I said, it's really, really important to ensure that the information is accurate in here so that your capitalization is effective and accurate within the system. So this is a cost plan. Really simply, what you're seeing here is basically a cost type, which is our operating or capital. And then we're also seeing our transaction class, because we could say whether something is internal labor, external labor, software, travel, etc. And then we're seeing the person, the resource, their role, and then we're seeing the dollar amount. So what it basically does is it goes out there, it calculates the number of hours multiplied by the rate. And from a financial perspective, we typically use a blended rate. So usually in organizations, they use a blended rate for internal employees. So a developer in the U.S. is 100, a developer in India is 75. However, for contractors, sometimes they use an actual rate because those might be significantly different than a blended rate. And so this is how we create cost plans. Now, sometimes organizations will send these costs directly to their finance system, and sometimes they'll send the hours, because typically if they send a cost, it's going to be inaccurate. So usually it's the hours that are sent over, because instead of using that blended rate, then they would use the actual rate for billing those employees, you know, $112 an hour versus 100. So most organizations would send hours, not dollars, and then you would tie back the dollars using the actual cost to see the cost variance. So we have cost, actual cost, and cost variance. Okay, the last couple of slides I'm going to show you are just cost saves at the portfolio level. So entering that cost plan, making it the plan of record, then it would give you information about the planned cost, actual cost, remaining costs, and even some financial metrics such as NPV, ROI, etc. And of course, in order to get the NPV and ROI, you also have to have a planned benefit. I'm not going to go a lot into that, but that's basically how much money are you going to make from implementing this particular project. And so each of these cost saves at the portfolio level, they bubble up to show you exactly what's going on within your particular portfolio. Now, it could be all projects. I happen to look at this from a portfolio perspective. But once you have those individual cost types that roll up to a cost plan, then you can see the data at either the system level or the portfolio level in terms of costs and get some variance analysis. Okay, so we're going to do a little demo now. So I'm going to share my screen. So now we are in our new user experience. Most of you have seen this by now, but in order to get to our timesheets, we would go to this little time piece right here. And this came out in 15.1. So this at the top is called our carousel. This is how we go back and forward in time to accurately report time. Now, one of the benefits about time entry, and one of the things in the controls that people put in, is oftentimes they only open 1 or 2 time periods. Now I'm in a demo system, so I have all my time periods open, but a good practice is that if you're, you know, on Wednesday you have to report time for the previous week, something of that nature, and at that point you close the time. Now sometimes people will leave the entire month open until the end of the month and then close that particular time period. But when you have a financial close, so for example, my financial close is on 2/28, I would want to make sure that that particular timesheet got posted in a particularly a good time frame in order to close the books. So it is important to create your time periods effectively and also to ensure that you're working with your finance organization to determine when they have their year end or their quarter end or their month end to close your books and to feed that time into their system. So what we see here basically is we see each individual project, and I can hover and kind of open and close. I can also go down here and I could see other work. So if I had, you know, holidays or vacation times, things like that. My ETC here is my estimate to complete. That's the amount of work I have left on that particular task. So if I go through here and I enter time, it's going to decrement my ETC as I'm entering that time. So I just keep going, and you can see as I'm doing this, it updates the amount of hours here as well as the amount of percentage of project time that I'm doing here. So if I were to go and take a vacation day on the 9th, then that's going to then adjust my project time forward. Of course, I can go in here. I can add work. So if there's a task that I am not assigned to during this time frame, but I am on, I can use my filters here, and I could select my particular task and add it on here. So it makes it really easy to add tasks to my timesheet. And in fact, I'm not leaving the window. It's just a pop-up. And that is obviously unlike our previous user experience where everything was a different kind of back and forth. The other thing you can do is you can leave a note. You can say, you know, hi, I have vacation next week, something like that. So whatever notes I wanted to enter, I could put those notes in there, and that would be a note to my manager that something might change or shift in the next week or why I did a particular thing. So if I've gone through here, let's report some time on February the 10th as well. I can then submit that particular timesheet. And that submission would then go to my manager. And you can see in this case, I'm actually my own manager, not a very common thing for the purpose of this demo, if that makes sense. And so I could approve here, but typically, as a manager, I would approve from my Kanban-like board from a time management perspective. So if we look here, here was my timesheet, here is review and approve. So you can see here that we have 5 different sections. Open, submitted, approved, posted, and returned. So open is basically all the things that people haven't done. What have they not done? And I have a little alarm clock to send a reminder. Submitted is the things that I just did. I've submitted it, but it hasn't been approved. Here's the things that have been approved. And then finally, once the jobs run, there are jobs in the background. They're typically automatic, and that posts the time back to the projects. And then finally, if I've returned any, and they've gone through the workflow again. At any time, I can use these remind all. I could use these approve all, return all. So it allows me to do things in bulk. And if I were to click on, say, for example, Brian, it would pop open the timesheet for him. Let me actually pop into another one. So if I click here, we can see Daniel, and we can see all the time that he has reported on various projects. So if I think that's a great idea and what he's done, I can then submit it through. And in this case, basically I've already approved that, but let's say I wanted to approve Hank's. I can just click that little button, click that approve, and it moves to the approved column. So that is really as simple and easy as it is to enter and approve time. The topic is much more complex when you talk about those financial aspects that we really had in there. But the time entry process should be very easy. There is no reason that it should be difficult for your employees to enter their time. It's more of a conversation that you're going to have with your organization as why it's important. And one of the things that I find extremely beneficial is getting that leadership buy-in. Because if you're a manager of a team, a line manager, you say it's really important to book your time. They might not believe you as much as if your VP or your, high-level manager says, not only why should you report the time, but here's how. And here's how we use the data. Now, the other thing that people often do is they'll either do the carrot or stick methodology, the carrot being, hey, if you report all your time accurately, you'll get a bonus, or maybe you get Friday, casual Friday, something like that. You get something like that. And then there's the stick. If you don't do this, then you will not get, 10% of your bonus. Obviously, that particular type of thing has to come from above. That's not something that, an individual line manager can do unless you wanted to get like, some kind of little quick perk, maybe an off-site or something of that nature. But it's really important not only to have a reason why you do time, but to have that executive buy-in from the top level to ensure that people know why you're doing it and what financial benefit the company gets. So if we capitalize more, if we do an R&D tax credit, therefore we'll have more money and we can hire more people. That's a really good thing to tell people what you're doing with the data, because if it's a black box, they are not going to nearly have as much impetus to report their time. So that's really going to be the topic. I know this is a quick topic. It's not it's not going to be one of those that we spend an hour on the detail, but I think there's probably some questions out there on, time management, how organizations are doing it, or I would even be open to how people are doing it themselves. So it sounds like we have a question. How should I do this? Should I just read these off?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I was just getting my here. So we got a couple of them already, and one is more on the process than anything. Where do you start when you want to become more involved in time management, not just with having this application up running, but change in organization? How do you get people to change their behavior, I guess the question is, right?
I think it really comes down to that buy-in. So first of all, you have to get time management rolled out either in a particular organization or from a high-level point of view. So that's the nuts and bolts, the PPM stuff. But it's all that other stuff, like why am I doing it? Are you watching me? Am I going to get fired if I don't report enough time? Now, the other thing that a lot of organizations do, and we don't tend to suggest this, is that some organizations, they say, you can only report 40 hours because that's only what we bill and you're a full-time employee. Well, what we would suggest instead is that have a process that runs after the fact that levels the hours. So let's say that you booked 50 hours for 2 projects. Well, we would level that down to 40 and we would bill that out. So we want to accurately report the time even if we don't bill all the hours because you're an FTE.
Yeah.
So we do that.
Yeah.
So getting started is really more than turning it on. That is the small part. It's the process changes that need to be adopted in order to really do that.
Cool. Another question, more simple to the point. What is considered project time?
Oh, so project time, let me go back and reshare. Okay, project time is really simple. Project time is projects, so B2B enhancements, industry, trade show. So if you can see here, 80% of my time is project time because I have 8 hours in other work. Other work is not project time. So that's, database maintenance, holiday, vacation time, sick time. Really simply, it's time on projects, any time. It's not capitalizable. It's not any of that. It's just time on projects.
Gotcha. Okay, that was simple enough. If you have an outside accounting or financial system you want to have integrated with this module, how would that work?
So one of the most common integrations we have is a financial system integration. SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, Lawson, we could name them forever. But our services organization has adapters that typically we would use to do this integration. And there's probably, there's a ton of financial systems, but probably the top 5 we've done hundreds of times. And so typically what we do is we would work with you directly or a partner to ensure that we know exactly what you want to do, and we would help build that out using our connectors. And in fact, we have a whole list of them that we can use. So it's not one size fits all because Lawson would be different than Oracle would be different than SAP. But we've used and we've done this particular process so many times that it's kind of very standard for us to do this integration. However, what we could do is we could have your salesperson work with our services organization to help you create that financial integration. So very common, and I would say if you're looking at this area, it's one of the most important integrations that you can do, because if you don't have a financial integration and you're not billing that time back internally or externally, it's kind of like a black hole. You have all this great time in PPM, but it's not visible to the executives. And if you make this time visible to the executives, they'll start to care about it and they'll say, wow, we're spending so much money on this project. Is that good? This project was only budgeted for so much, and they might end up spending more or less on projects in future based on the time you report.
Interesting. You also mentioned that timesheets would be embedded in Rally in a later version. Can you tell us more about that, when or how that would be?
So I don't know the exact release date. I had heard it was for the next release, but I don't know, so I can't confirm the exact date. But basically, this exact timesheet would be a page on Agile Central. So what you're seeing here would be a link within our Agile Central, formerly known as Rally system, and that would flow through into CAPPM. So the reason for that is oftentimes your Agile employees, your people who are doing the user stories, the tasks, they don't want to log into CAPPM, but they still have to do their timesheet. So what we do is we drop this timesheet into Agile Central. So one of the things they had before, they did have a timesheet in Agile Central. It was probably used by no more than 2 customers. However, it also didn't have those things. It didn't stand the test of finance. It didn't have, capitalization. It didn't have approval workflows. It didn't have kind of all the things that you need from an audit perspective. And so what we really found is that CPPM has all that important finance information and governance information. So why fix the Agile Central timesheet? Why not embed that Agile Central the CAPPM timesheet in Agile Central? So that's exactly what we're doing in future releases.
Very nice. Very good. And so the version we're looking at now, what version is that?
This is 15.1.
Very good.
So this came out late, before CA World last year. So this is a late 2016 release. Our next release is our 15.2 release.
That's right, and they're coming out this spring. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. If a customer who saw this wanted to know more, wanted to have maybe a personal demo or so, what would he or she do?
So there's two different ways. You can always contact me, and we go back to screen sharing, and we can get you in touch with the right person. Or, if you happen to know your solution strategist and who you work with from a sales perspective, they can get you in touch with the appropriate demo person. So contact your solution strategist, your pre-sales person, or myself, and we will get you some more information about time entry.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. I really enjoyed the presentation, and thank you for all of you out there who came and joined us today. If you have any questions, you know where to reach us. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.